Welcome back to N's NotebookLM. Today, we're tackling a massive question, one that historians have puzzled over for ages. How on earth did China's empire manage to survive for 2,000 years while pretty much every other great empire crumbled? It's a fascinating story about power, stability, and a group of shadow rulers who are really running the show.
Okay, let's just let that sink in for a second. The Roman Empire? It shattered into a million pieces. The great empires in the Americas, they were conquered and replaced. And yet, China, through countless wars, rebellions, and full-blown invasions, somehow kept its fundamental machinery humming along. So, how'd they do it? What was the secret?
Well, here's the twist. The answer isn't the famous emperors, the legendary sons of heaven. Nope. The real constant, the glue holding it all together, was a powerful class of men who ruled not by divine right, but by their knowledge and their iron grip on the state itself. They were the scholar officials, known as the gentry.
To really get how the gentry came to be so powerful, we first have to understand the problem they were created to solve, this endless cycle of dynastic collapse.
You see, you'd have this pattern. A strong dynasty would rise up, unify the country, and rule for maybe a few centuries. But then, things would start to fray. Corruption would creep in, rebellions would spark, and the whole thing would just come crashing down into chaos. And yet, and this is the key part, after every single collapse, a new dynasty would pop up and the state would be rebuilt, looking almost identical to the one that just failed. It's like someone, or something, was holding on to the blueprint.
And that blueprint, as you might have guessed, was held by this entirely new class that basically rose from the ashes of China's old feudal system.
For centuries, China was run by a classic feudal aristocracy, noble families who had power just because of their last name. But during these incredibly chaotic periods, that whole system just completely fell apart. So, by the time the first emperor finally unites China, he's got a problem. He can't rely on those old hereditary lords. They might challenge him for power. What he needs is a new class of loyal, skilled administrators to run his massive centralized state. This created a huge power vacuum, and, well, into that vacuum stepped the gentry.
So who were these guys exactly? The gentry were this really unique blend. On one hand, they were landowners, so they had money and a real stake in keeping things stable locally, but, and this is the crucial part, they were also scholars. Their entire path to power was through education and passing these incredibly difficult civil service exams.
I mean, this was a revolutionary shift in where power came from. It wasn't about who your dad was anymore, it was about what you knew. The old military nobility, guys who ruled from their war chariots, were replaced by a civil bureaucracy that ruled from a desk. And, in theory at least, this meant that anyone with enough brains and determination could rise to the top.
So, this new class needed a whole new set of tools to grab and hold on to their influence across this enormous empire.
Right. Their power wasn't based on armies or brute force. Instead, their arsenal was completely intellectual. It was built on a shared culture, a deep mastery of Confucian philosophy, history, and literature. And all of that knowledge was put to the test in the imperial examinations, which were the one and only gateway to a career in government. And this whole process created this perfect, self-perpetuating cycle of power. A family's wealth from their land would pay for a son's education, which was long and expensive. If he managed to pass the exams and get a government job, he could then use his position to protect and grow the family's wealth and influence. And that, of course, ensured that the next generation could do the exact same thing. It was a brilliant system.
Now, it's really easy to hear the word Confucianism and think of some dusty, abstract philosophy. But our source material here gives us this fantastic analogy. It wasn't a religion like we might think of it today. It was more like the shared social code, the entire operating system for the ruling class. It was all the little rituals, the ethics, the social norms that signaled to everyone else that you belonged, that you were a gentleman. It was the cultural glue.
So once they were in power, the gentry created a system where they became the true managers of the empire, no matter who was actually sitting on the dragon throne.
What you ended up with was a pretty clear division of labor. The emperor, he was in charge of the sacred rituals. He was the symbolic link between heaven and earth. But the gentry, they did all the actual work of governing. They collected the taxes, they administered justice, they built the roads and canals. They literally ran the country.
And because they staffed the entire bureaucracy, these gentry families formed these incredibly powerful networks, or cliques, all based on marriage, who he went to school with, and mutual interests.
These cliques ended up controlling everything, from major policy decisions to who got which job. An emperor who tried to go against them could find himself totally isolated, basically a prisoner in his own palace.
And here, right here, is the most stunning proof of their real power. It went beyond dynasties, and it even went beyond ethnicity. When foreign invaders like the Mongols or the Manchus conquered China, they very quickly realized, uh-oh, we have no idea how to run this enormous place. But who did? The gentry. So the conquerors just kept them on the job. The gentry served new masters, but they preserved their own power and the amazing administrative system they had perfected.
So what does this all add up to? What is the ultimate legacy of this incredible class of scholar officials? To put it simply, they were the continuity. While emperors and dynasties were temporary, the gentry's bureaucratic state was the stable, resilient framework that held Chinese civilization together through thick and thin. You could almost call them the permanent government, the deep state that just kept on going.
The names we all remember from the history books, the emperors, the generals, they were often just temporary actors on a stage that was built, maintained, and really run by the gentry.
And that leaves us with a question that echoes far beyond ancient China, doesn't it? Where does true power really lie? Is it with the symbol, the figurehead at the top, or is it with the vast, knowledgeable bureaucracy that actually makes everything happen day in and day out? If this topic has captured your interest and you'd like to dive deeper, the book is called A History of China by Wolfram Eberhard.